thank you so much for joining Stories from the Block number 9. I'm really, really excited to be here with both of you today and have a chance to do a bit of a deep dive into the MACH Alliance. What does it mean in the first place? It's a term that's often thrown around and that's often talked about, but what maybe we can dive a little bit into kind of the origin story of the MACH Alliance and really ultimately what it's trying to achieve. And I want to explore a little bit, obviously, we as tech vendors have a very direct role with the MACH Alliance, but I'm also very excited to talk to you today, Tim, and see a little bit about the role that agencies can also play within the MACH Alliance. But maybe before I get started, I wanted to pass it over to you to introduce yourselves real quick. Iris, would you like to get started and just tell us a little bit about what you do and where you're based as well? I always think that's an important question to cover off.
Yeah, absolutely. So by way of introduction, I'm Iris Schiefer. By day, I'm an enterprise account executive at BigCommerce, a composable SaaS e-commerce platform, but actually wearing my other hat for the purpose of today's session, which is my role as a member of the MACH Alliance Growth Council. I am based in London, in my home office, as you can see at the moment. And also just double checking, can everybody hear me okay? I've had a couple of connection issues with the stream, so I'm hoping everything's all right.
It's all good.
Yep.
Thank you so much for that, and it's such a pleasure to have you here today. Tim, why don't you take it over and tell us a little bit about your work at Profound?
Sure. So good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Tim McMillen. I'm the CEO and founder here at Profound. Profound is a digital experience design agency. We help customers with the full range of kind of digital projects, right through from CX and design up front, right through to implementation, support, optimization at the end of projects. And I guess what's really brought me to the topic today is that about 4 years ago, we actually made quite a bold decision, decided that actually for all of our digital implementations, we were only going to work with and partner with kind of headless, as they were known at the time, technologies. So we were one of the first here in the UK to take that approach, and really happy to share some of the insight and the ups and downs of the journey that we've had along the way over the last few years.
Wonderful. I always like to talk to innovative people that are willing to give things a risk and to try out new things. So that should be good fun. By means of quick introduction for myself, so I'm Julius. I work as an analyst relations manager at Storyblok. That means I get to hear a lot of industry insights. I get to work a lot with businesses like Forrester and with Gartner and IDC. And as part of that role, I also had the desire to work together with the MACH Alliance and to take that relationship a bit further within Storyblok. I think we joined a while back, but there's a lot of room for us to make the most out of the MACH Alliance, and that's what I'm really hoping that we can do over the course of the coming year. So I look forward to having this conversation today, and maybe to kick it off already, Iris, I wanted to start with you. So I wanted to ask, just in general, for those that don't actually know, for those that might, that might be here today, but that see this term being thrown around all the time, but aren't so sure what it exactly actually means and what it all embodies. Would you be happy to give us a bit of an introduction into what is the MACH Alliance? What does the term mean? And what can we learn?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those that are unfamiliar with the MACH Alliance, the Alliance is a not-for-profit organization that was founded in 2020 with the aim of helping companies adopt a more composable technology stack, kind of that best-of-breed focused approach. So the founding members were all either composable technology providers, namely commercetools and Amplience, or system integrators with a composable first mindset. And the two SI founding members were EPAM Systems and Valtech. And they found in their conversations, as have many other members, that although a lot of organizations were keen from moving away from that monolithic stack, they struggled to find the best approach for their business and kind of how to assess and make sense of this myriad of different technologies that were available to them. So the aim of the MACH Alliance was to take on some of that assessment lift and create a definition of what best of breed really means in the market today. B, put in place a certification process to ensure member technologies and SI met that set of criteria. And C, allow that flexibility of choice across technology categories and kind of create a community for sharing best practices and educating around MACH. And I know I've said MACH several times, and you mentioned kind of what does the definition mean? We love an acronym in this industry. So to provide a bit of context around what those elements mean in terms of our certification, the first piece is the solution microservices based? Can those functionalities be developed and deployed independently? Do those microservices have their own domain and data store? The second piece is, are the applications connected via webhooks or API calls? Do the solution providers have 100% API coverage? And are those APIs written in best practice query languages like GraphQL or REST? i.e., does the organization have an API first approach? The third letter is cloud native. So we're looking at 100% cloud native multi-tenant SaaS solutions. So there shouldn't be any versions to the product. Customers shouldn't have to install their own updates or patches. And from an SI perspective, we're looking to have engineers and architects trained in one or more of the major cloud providers, and also have a partnership agreement in place with them. And the last letter, the H, is for headless. So either is the solution provider headless, is the front end logic decoupled from the back end, or as an SI, do you implement headless stacks? And the aim around that is really to kind of further agility, speed to market, and unlock potential for those customized sort of omni-channel best of breed customer experiences. So I hope that provides a little bit of an overview of what the Alliance does and how it can help organizations.
Absolutely. That was very, very interesting. Actually, I want to piggyback off of that, and also something that you said at the beginning, Tim. So you mentioned that a couple of 4 years ago or so, as a business, you guys decided that you were going to only do MACH. What was the thinking behind that, and what was also that process like at the time? Was it a very scary decision, or was it something that just made such sense that you didn't even have to think twice about it?
A little bit scary because it was something new. We'd spent the best part of 10 or more years working with more traditional kind of DXP all-in-one suite products, and I think what really tipped the balance for me was just how I felt that those products were stopping bringing value to clients. Quite often some of those products have been in situ in clients' organizations for several years, and they've been bended and buckled beyond standard kind of implementations to achieve the things that clients wanted to do. But those modifications often made upgrading very, very difficult, very, very expensive, and quite a lot of investment was going into just keeping a technology stack alive, and we were being kind of held back from actually delivering further value and initiatives to our clients through experience innovation and things like that. So we sensed from our clients there was this real resentment of this permanent upgrade cycle that was going on there, and all that investment that was going in just to keep some software licensed and up to date and supported could have been going into more kind of value add areas inside the organization. So that was really a key driver. And the second key thing for us as well was that we were getting ourselves quite frustrated with, particularly if we worked in partnerships on projects, with always kind of designing the same thing over and over again, because there was then this fear of actually bending or modifying the technology. So people wanted to keep it as standard as possible. And particularly in e-commerce, quite a lot of the e-commerce experience is homogenous. And if you're only focusing on designing and thinking about the experience of those homogenous pieces, and you're not really getting to detail the stuff that makes a bit more difference to the customer, it becomes a little bit kind of laborious and same old. So we wanted to get to a situation where we could use technologies to enable the experiences that the customers of our clients told us they wanted to have with our clients, and to unlock more value for our customers. So those were the real key drivers behind our choice.
Yeah. It's something that we hear so often as well. Ultimately, when businesses decide that they do ultimately wish to make that switch and implement those MACH principles, it's often coming from a place as well of having old legacy systems that at some point you're just having to really throw developers at. That's actually one of the most common reasons. But it definitely resonates in terms of what you're saying in joining the MACH Alliance and what a process that is. I can tell from my own experience actually before I joined Storyblok, I was working already with Storyblok on their strategy together with Forrester. And I remember at the time when the topic came up for the first time, it's actually the first time that I got into contact with the entire subject of the MACH Alliance. We organized a call with a couple of analysts in order to discuss the MACH Alliance and whether this was something that was what role this was going to be playing over the course of the coming years, and where that was going to be headed. And what resonated really at the time already was the fact that on the one hand, we make so many investments regularly into our developer community. Our developer community is something that we've been working on for a very long time. We organize so many conferences and participate in so many conferences with our developer community. So we have that area that we've been working on, but then we realized that they basically recommended, well, there's another community that you can also be a part of and where you can also ultimately have a really big impact in terms of educating the market, in terms of bringing forward those principles. And that was ultimately also one of the big reasons why we decided to join the MACH Alliance. Iris, I wanted to come back to you and ask, to me, the one of the biggest pieces of the MACH Alliance is what we can do together in order to educate the market and bring forward those principles. Where do you see the role of the MACH Alliance and the future of the MACH Alliance when it comes to that?
Yeah, I think a couple of different initiatives there. Obviously, there is more being done in terms of fostering that community, not only in terms of Alliance members, but also people who are interested in learning about MACH, organizations or SIs that are looking to kind of like take, as Tim said, that more kind of composable approach. So working on putting together more events like in different locations, putting together those educational resources. And I think especially on the education piece, I mean, there's been a lot of evangelization done. There's a lot of content out there that kind of talks a lot about the principles, what is MACH, what are some of the benefits, but not a lot of it is kind of grounded in those real life examples. Okay, like how did an organization actually go from, say, a monolithic structure? What was the kind of process for them? What were the elements that they replaced first? How did they work together with their SI? Like which pieces of, which elements of the stack maybe like aren't they taking that approach to? Because it's pretty rare to have a fully, 100% MACH stack. Like it's very rare to see that. So trying to find more of those examples, trying to bring ambassadors onto our program who've implemented those stacks working for those larger organizations. So trying to build that and trying to kind of have those different examples and use cases that folks can relate to.
Yeah, that's incredible. Tim, how do you see it? Do you find that often you're the people to bring the concepts of the MACH to new clients when you get in touch with them? How do you see that education piece in the market? Or is it something where businesses have already identified the need for it and will then reach out to you?
I think it's a bit of both. It depends on whether there's a fairly forward-thinking CTO in place, because quite often they would lead the conversation with the vision about this is how our enterprise architecture is going to evolve over time, and they'll be the driving force behind that initiative. But in other times in other companies that maybe don't have such experience or even that role in place. They rely on agencies for their guidance and their advice, and you have to make it less about the technology when you're talking to the business, and actually more about the value it's going to bring, how it's going to change things for them, what IP they're going to own, what they're going to save, what the experience is going to be like for the customer, and sell it through the concepts through business value rather than technology value. So I think that's where agencies really have a strong role to play here, is helping deal with both of those personas within an organization might be facing some kind of challenge, because ultimately you're only going to start thinking about changing things when you have a problem or a change, or you're looking to improve things or make cost savings or something like that. So yeah, being able to bridge the gap between the business and the technology is something that I think agencies are really well positioned to be able to do and should be leading with, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have an example of a time where you were able to do such an implementation particularly effectively?
So we quite often find in the B2B space that if an organisation has got to a point where it's got an IT team and a marketing team and they made investments in technology, quite often you'll find in very specific verticals in B2B there'll be an industry-specific ERP system running the business, and much like I kind of described earlier, that ERP system does 80% perhaps of what the business needs to do, but that last 20% normally gets done as customization on top of that system, and then that system becomes hard to maintain, hard to scale, hard to adapt, and hard to move away from. So in a couple of instances, we've been working with clients to kind of roll back the customizations that they've made in their ERP systems and actually create, or bring in headless or best of breed technologies to deliver that capability. And then over time, we, in a very kind of considered and programmatic way, we are taking away features and capabilities of these ERP systems, which are quite often quite old, no longer very well supported, or not even able to, in some instances that we bumped into, users can't even multitask within them. So actually putting new heads on top of these technologies to enable people to multitask and to be more efficient and do more value-add tasks in their day job in these B2B organizations is something we do quite a lot as well. So we've got one particular client where we've done that, and I can remember we've been working with them for a couple of years now, and we had some really nice feedback about 6 months ago when we actually released a new head on the customer service desk's kind of interface, and the head of the customer service wrote to us and said, for the first time ever, my team have gone home at 4:00 because they're so much more efficient since it was launched. And that is really real great value to demonstrate to a customer, and that really vindicates the choices to actually say, okay, well, you can't replace what you've got there in the ERP system all in one go, because you'll be doing it for a long time. You'll be forever waiting for value to arrive, and your requirements are going to change over time. So let's just fix some of the pain in small, easy to manage chunks and release it iteratively over time. And the more of that you do within these organizations, the more value they see, the more they want to invest in it. And then before you know it, you've gracefully kind of decomposed that monolithic or that legacy kind of ERP system, and the clients actually being able to do more for their customers, and their users are actually having a much more pleasurable and enjoyable and value-add time at work. Yeah.
That's such a great story. I love that story also when I heard about it for the first time. That was super interesting. Iris, what sort of advice would you give to businesses that are looking to be a bit more MACH ready and that want to go into this whole architecture?
Yeah, actually, I was going to say specifically on Tim's example, like that's an area that we, especially on the Growth Council, are exploring more in terms of, I think a lot of people think about MACH in terms of front end technology, but actually oftentimes the blocker is kind of like, having that overdeveloped back end technology, and it's kind of hard to know where to start untangling functionality from that kind of like monolithic siloed web. And I think there's no kind of one size fits all template. Like each organization is different. Each use case is different. They're all going to be using these technologies in different ways. But I think obviously trying to keep the focus on using the technologies in the way that they were intended to be used, not overdeveloping, kind of moving towards that best of breed approach. As I say, it's kind of hard to create a template. So I would, to come back to the educational resources piece, we're trying to kind of like look at like those different use cases and routes to market, because I think we've seen a big shift away from this kind of rip and replace approach as well, kind of moving towards that more sort of, I guess, iterative approach to replatforming or replacing the technology stack, kind of looking at those business critical components and the dependencies, and then seeing where each of what is the right order to replace them, what other systems are going to be affected. And that's really where the SI members of the Alliance and sort of those supporting composable technology sitting outside of the Alliance really, come into play. And like that experience is absolutely invaluable to a Mac implementation.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. No, and it's something also where I think as an ecosystem, as a MACH ecosystem, beyond also any members, any businesses which are helping implement the MACH principles, any businesses which are looking to implement the MACH principles, is something where we all stand to benefit from each other's successes. So that was also one of the biggest reasons at the end of the day why we decided that we wanted to join the MACH Alliance. Is if you look at the content management area specifically now, just speaking from our personal experience, you've got a ball which is, this gigantic, which is the traditional content management systems, and of those, it makes sense. 60% of all websites in the world are actually on WordPress. And then you've got this smaller point in comparison, which is the MACH content management systems, the headless content management systems. And I fundamentally believe that is a question of time until, those balls are going to switch positions, and until these principles are going to be something that is commonly accepted. But where we are at the moment in time, you notice that we all benefit from the success that we're having as MACH members and as bringing the MACH principles further. So that was one of the biggest reasons why we wanted to join as well, and see it grow and be part of that growth. And as I go on to the topic of the growth of the MACH Alliance, where do you see the future of the MACH Alliance going, Iris? What do you think is what's on the cards, but also what is it gonna mean for the industry in general, and where are we headed?
Yeah, I'd start off saying that I am not a purist by any means. We as BigCommerce, for example, we work with plenty of technologies and SIs that aren't part of the MACH Alliance. So I don't think I think it's kind of like a sort of a textbook of what does best of breed mean, and we want to kind of continue to have that rigor in there, but it's by no means sort of an exhaustive list of the technologies that are out there. There's new technologies being developed every day. There's new approaches, different SIs taking that approach as well. I think for the Alliance, again, the part of the focus is, of course, maintaining that rigor, maintaining flexibility of choice. So making sure, there is that selection of technologies across different categories. And a big focus of interest for the Alliance is also, it's a technology category that was launched last year called enablers. So it could actually be solution providers as well. So these are sort of companies that might not directly provide MACH solutions or implement MACH stacks, but they're critical to kind of bringing MACH architecture to life, or supporting new and faster routes to market, or sort of specific use cases for different verticals. So for software, these enablers would be, say, supporting those kind of functional domain-specific components of MACH architecture, but might not meet that criteria themselves. So it could be something like data storage or monitoring or payments. So, kind of really looking at how these MACH stacks are really being brought to life, and some of those technologies that are helping to do that, and not kind of just taking that, linear approach of this is MACH, this is not.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I think that's something where the SIs and agencies will ultimately play such a massive role to really also shape how this is being implemented. I know from personal experience, sometimes you hear about ways that your solutions are being implemented that you could have never imagined yourself previously, and agencies are out there doing some of the most innovative things with MACH solutions. How do you see the role of the agency in the future of the MACH Alliance, Tim? What do you think agencies stand to benefit from the MACH Alliance, and alternatively also, what do you think the MACH Alliance will benefit from agencies?
I think I see it as a very symbiotic relationship, really. I think there needs to be a very close-knit community between agencies and the other partners in the alliance, because we could be a bit of a mouthpiece for clients, right? So we spend a bit more time with clients than perhaps the vendors do. The vendors might be more involved up front in the selling stage, but we live through the implementation, we do the ongoing support, and we've got our ear to the ground with what things are going on in the marketplace, in that competitor space, that they're going to want to pounce upon from an opportunity point of view. So that kind of insight can really help organizations like yourself to develop features, either ideas, look for different parts of the ecosystem that need to be supported. And I also think that the MACH Alliance have probably got a role to play to help us deliver value faster. Keep building on that ecosystem, bringing to life more things. That means that we can invest our clients' money into doing the more interesting, difficult things that they want to solve, not the things that you end up doing time and time again with customers. There, bringing together more options in the ecosystem for us to accelerate through projects would be really, really helpful as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. So I see that we're almost at the end of time. So I want to make sure that before we finish off, we get to one of the questions that was asked to us in the chat, and which kind of also ties into the future of the MACH Alliance. So this question, which was asked by Maria, which revolves around the possibility that MACH standardizes principles of interoperability, so that tech ecosystems can be perfectly interchangeable. So I'm curious what your view is on that, both of you, and how you see that. Maybe we can start with you, Iris, and then move on to you, Tim.
Yeah, I think it's firstly great question, Maria. I think it's a yes and no answer for me. I think obviously the aim of the alliance is to kind of standardize the principles of interoperability and kind of define that best of breed approach. But I think it's very rare, as I say, for most organizations to have that fully maxed stack. Every dependency is different. So there can't ever be, I think, a kind of template for deployment in that way. You can't really standardize that process because of how different organizations are. So I think the aim really should be to kind of adopt that composable approach for as many experience critical functionalities as possible, kind of start slowly, take that iterative approach. The whole idea, I think, as well around, being microservices based is that you can kind of build out those individual pieces of functionality, take that test and learn approach, and then kind of slowly move towards that goal, kind of set that as the goal, and then, take steps, sustainable steps as an organization to move towards that.
I would completely agree with that. Tim, how do you see that?
I think if you've adopted the composable approach, then you may not be able to, change the whole ecosystem out in one lump go. But if you get to a point where maybe you need a different PIM or a different DAM or a different CMS because your business needs have changed or your experience needs have changed, then actually following these MACH principles should make it a lot easier than it is today to just replace one specific component of that composable architecture. I don't think it'll ever be plug and play, well, not for a long time anyway, but actually you're shortening that lead time of bringing that new, that replacement or that upgraded component into the stack. And if it's being built in a well-formed way, you should be able to do that without any real kind of major impact on other products and systems within that ecosystem. So I think it's a bit of a journey to get on to have complete interchangeability, but I think from where we are today, actually doing piece by piece when you need to is a lot simpler and a lot easier than it has been in the past.
Yeah, it's very true. Maybe in the distant future, we can think about it. Maybe that's, a future plan for the MACH Alliance in 20 years or so.
It'll all be done in a no-code way in a few years. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's also true. Well, that kind of brings us to the end of the half hour that we had. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I know that Tim, you have another session in a bit. I think you'll be jumping in and out. But thank you, Iris, also for joining. It was very lovely to speak with you. And I hope that I will see you both soon, at the very latest, in a whole host of MACH Alliance events that are going to be organized next year. So thank you both.
Great. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.